That was a beautiful opening of this episode of Chain of Sounds. My name is Nisse Palm, and I have the great pleasure to present for you
Giuseppe Ettorre.
Welcome to Sweden.
Well, thank you, Nisse.
How come you all of a sudden appear in this part of the world?
Well, I think first of all, some Swedish bass players appeared in my part of the world. That is when Thomas Allen, the co-principal in the Göteborg Opera Orchestra, and all the bass players of the opera, they came and see us in Milan to, as they say, and there's many friends of mine in this part of the world, they say, to get inspired. That is, I find it is such a beautiful idea that an entire section of an opera theater, it finds new ideas. They go around to, because for a bit in La Scala, what we miss is, sometimes I stay 38 years, and when I retired, I really said, I don't know if I could have done more than that, because it's really no stop sort of work. Is really, we do very beautiful thing, but really very tight together. You never have much time to breathe, to get ideas. And I think that idea that you go somewhere else, abroad or wherever, to get new emotions, new ideas, is really good. So they came there, and of course it ended up like most of bass meetings, going to have a nice beer together and meeting up after the concert. And so since then, Thomas always sort of got in touch with me, but to try and see if we could do the other way around, so that I could come here, because evidently they found some good ideas in the way we played. I suppose that they wanted to touch more closely, to get more close to that way of playing. And for what I told you before, that is very tight, the work in La Scala, it was really nearly hopeless to find a bit of time to do something like that. Eventually, I retired from the main orchestra of La Scala, from the opera. I still play with the Philharmonica, but since 1st of July, I retired. And of course, eventually we had the time to do that. Yeah. So it's something we are trying to organize since a couple of years, really. And now the time has come eventually. So I'm so happy.
It's so easy to get inspired from you. So I understand totally. And a special thanks for Thomas, actually, who whispered in my ear that you were coming. And,
that's kind.
And he connected us. So, and I'm very thankful to being able to meet you here. You take your time. I know you have a busy schedule. And I think we should speak about a few things, because there is always something that we can develop. We can always, it doesn't matter if you have been playing for 38 years in the La Scala, you can still develop things, right?
But definitely, you never stop, Nisse. You never stop, but myself, I always look for improvement. I never play, each time I play a piece, I never do it. I always try and do one gram, something more of what I did the last time I played. Yeah. I mean, I never accept to just play again one thing just to play it. Well, it may happen if you got a sequel of concerts very close by, but if I don't know, the B minor of Bottesini, I play it since the first time, I was a boy, practically, still a student. But each time, even now, I replay that, I always try to dig it in deeper and deeper, and to find more accurate positions, more accurate score. And so, I mean, that's what keeps us, in some way, keeps us alive as musicians, what I mean?
Do you have any thoughts on, it's easy to keep a solitary life as a bass player, because usually, if you don't play in an orchestra, you're usually on your own.
Well, you
mean in chamber music,
in chamber music, yeah, I got it
so
right.
Yeah, So, what would you give tips or advice to keep the inspiration going if you don't have a section to share your experience with?
That's a good question, because I find, in a way, I mean, it's tiring, but the bass has got many different sides, and in some ways, personally, I think that they are complementary one with the other. They sort of help one with. So playing in the orchestra, it helps you also to know the author. The authors sometimes better than in the symphonic, for instance, so that when you do chamber music of the same author, you have done also the symphonies, and vice versa. When you do the symphony, you know the chamber production of that author. And when you do the chamber music, maybe, you know, you might end the opera, you might connect with Bottesini solo pieces that they took a lot from opera, but also from Schubert chamber music and Chopin. He wrote pieces a la Chopin. He wrote a quartet inspired. You know, so in some ways, I don't regret to have done all these things together, because probably to always be by yourself, you know what I mean? It makes you play in that particular way, and like Baroque experience as well. That's great, you know what I mean? We had a great chance of doing some Baroque operas in La Scala with conductors that they knew what they were doing on that repertoire.
Yes.
You know? So they made us play with as close as possible with the gut strings and with the tuning, you know, lower down, like in ancient times, and it was such a great experience.
436
yes,
or something. Yes.
One we did 419. Yeah, once.
Oh,
Yeah, usually
okay,
it was
yes.
428 or
Yeah.
something, so the same, nearly the same.
Yeah.
But one time we did even lower down. But and that helped a lot my playing. You know what I mean? I did some Baroque playing in trio in my youth with a great Italian cembalist, Emilia Fadini. That she was a great. A part of a performance was somebody that really knew how to do that. But you know, I think bass is one of the string instruments that has got the highest variety of use. Not to mention if you start pizzicato. I mean, if the other string players they might be happier on some solo performances because their instruments are more dedicated. But when we do a pizzicato, all cellists and violins say, pizzicato, the bass. I mean, when you play in an orchestra, you make tons of noise, but when we do nice pizzicato, you see the colleagues, they say, you can see them really. So, you know, this is something that is only us that has got, that we can use slightly jazzy as well. You know, so actually, we've got like 3 or 4 different instruments. So we got it's already 3, and then so it's 4, and all the differences, you know, all the sort of gray things you can generate, you know, the sort of half tones you can generate. You can, let me say that having a wide sort of view of the possibilities, because you didn't just read them on the books, but you just did them on the field. You know, it helps you recognize in a score, when you are reading a score in an orchestra, immediately if there is some sort of recall. Of course, I can find some jazzy bits in Stravinsky, you know, or well, Gershwin obviously has got some red, but I can find some Baroque references in Brahms. You know what I mean? So, because you have played that repertoire, so each time one author sort of quotes a different epoch, you have actually played some of that. So it gets, I think it improves your capacity of getting to a good interpretation, because you are conscious of all the different colors that the bass or music in general can sound like in that epoch. So you can even see when a particular author himself is looking backwards, or when he's so clever that he's looking forward. Because, I mean, there are some progressions in Mozart that they are nearly, we discovered in the 40th symphony, they are nearly like 12 semitones. Ti, ti, to, po, 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 po. It's something like that. You know, if you go and put them together, there is not one note in the art. I mean, it's such a modern concept that we'll have in la musica seriale, you know, later on. And I think that's really good. That's really good.
That's really
so
good,
it's tiring, because when you have to make a solo concert after 5 hours of orchestra, it's tiring. But I don't regret it. I'm really happy that, because now actually, being my age, you know, I can now enjoy, you know, having all this sort of common repertoire in myself, and dedicate maybe more specifically to give more importance to solo playing, to chamber playing. But you know, I've done the rest, and you know, I've got a higher consciousness, as I can say.
A little bit. Now it's your time, right?
Now it's time, you know, because if you are as I said, La Scala, then it's very requiring on that side. So I had to keep solo, and now is my chance to sort of, you know, try and do more of what I've left a bit behind. But in any case, they went together. Yeah. I did all my international competitions while I was playing in the orchestra.
I would have loved to play in a section, you know, to sit on the right side and play with you in your section. That
yes,
would be,
well, you can come tomorrow. You can join us. We are going to make a sort of section. Yes. That's the idea of Thomas, to make a section tutorship.
Wonderful. Yes.
You know what I mean?
So, speaking about sections, being a principal, you have a few responsibilities. You have responsibility to the composer. You have responsibility to the conductor, to the orchestra, of course, but you have also responsibility to your section. What are your special thoughts on I'm not speaking about to getting the respect of your colleagues. I'm speaking more about what is your ambition to get the most of the people who are sitting to your right.
Of course. Well, I can tell you speak rather precisely about that, because I started in the tutti, and then I became principal. So when I became principal, I knew how you feel like when you are there, and at least in La Scala we have the luxury of having all good musicians in the section. But you know, I must say, a bit all over the place now. It's difficult. I mean, all competitions, they are usually quite difficult to win nowadays. I mean, they told me, my colleagues, that you know, my old colleagues, that just a few years after the war, you know, they didn't have people. You know, so as soon as, apparently at some point, wasn't the most required thing, that wasn't so much that you played well, but that you actually had a double bass, an instrument, because you know they were so poor and there were so many destroyed that actually, if you actually were the proprietor of the double bass, already you had a good chance to get into an orchestra. And it's so sad in some way, but you can imagine how.
But in another way, we know that there were a lot of Italian-built basses that were transported to England and to the US.
Went away, exactly.
But that's another story, and probably another episode.
Exactly. But now referring more to the level that is required now to win a competition, a bit all over the place. Of course, the more important is the place where you apply, like in all works, you know, and the most difficult it becomes. But you know, also the bass has deeply changed its nature, you know, but that has been quite recent in a way. I would say that has become so widely used as a solo instrument is I mean, before there were just one or two people, three people that could do that. Now, improving even the strings, and the violin makers being always improving also all what is concerned about the setup of the bass, and having some young talented boys and girls, and you can actually do now quite at an age that is quite young. Even because, like in France, they've started now putting the mini bass. In my time, you didn't speak about mini bass. Now, mini bass, especially in France, in Germany, my friend Klaus Freudenstein, he's really sweet.
And
he
like
puts his
20, 30 of them in the group.
But I must say, France is very active on that. Like a great friend of mine that was my pupil as well, but it's Teotime Voisin. Now he's the first. I don't know if he's a but in a very important orchestra. But he's a brilliant player. He started, when I had him, he was 14. And already could play Bolero Bottesino, but with a smile on the face, because when you start young, you have a completely different approach with the instrument than when you have to fight, when you start thinking too much. So that's important, that you have got people that can understand if they want, because an orchestral player, you have to be careful. You must get them in the good mood. And I think basically they have to. The first message you must go through is that you are not doing for your own sense of power or narcissism, the things you're saying.
That's what I meant.
You know what I mean? Because if that goes through, it becomes a thing of psychology. They must feel that what you do is in function of doing better the music, and especially in an orchestra, is not even said that is my first choice, my first musical choice, because in that way I'm a sort of I'm helping the conductor that he is in charge of the main interpretation of a passage. I'm trying to get in sympathy, in empathy with the conductor, and try and make his idea sort of mine. And be like a filter, you know what I mean? Be like his assistant in that sense. So not even say that would be my first choice, you know what I mean? And that sometimes in orchestra can be difficult, because if you start thinking that and it doesn't, of course with first-class conductors, very rarely that happens. But there are some young talents sometimes, some very nice people that maybe they're not so famous, but they might indeed have ideas that nobody has thought about, and they make something different. So in that case, if you start making the word, because we have, the worst thing is to say we have always done like that, and what is meant? I mean, if it's compatible with the score, if it's unless things they get so much out of hands that of course you may suggest to the conductor your own experience. Say, well, look, maestro, we usually did that. Are you sure that's what you want? But in any case, you must dialogue, and they must understand that that's what you are doing, not for your own, do that like that. It's very easy to get misunderstood.
It's not a question of win or lose. It's more a question of explaining.
It's a question. Sometimes, I mean, it does help when you understand the conductor so well that you may anticipate what he is going to say.
Yes.
And so sometimes it did happen that I made a remark, something. I say, well, guys, be careful there not to give, I don't know, an accent or vibrate that. And 1 minute after, you see the conductor, sorry, bassist, can you please not do that?
Yes.
I was a little late. I was a little late, but today, that's just what, well, I said, well, it's better we do it before, for two reasons, two main reasons. One, because you avoid, being stopped, and you can easily deal by yourself with music, you know what I mean? You don't need somebody else to. Once we have understood what he wants, how to make it, we are the experts of the bass. You know what I mean? And second, you save time, Because many times, some speaking with friends, they said, well, Pino, you don't realize how much time a conductor saves if already a section in some way it works autonomously. You know what I mean? And we got to that point many times with the until I left that remembering of being there. That once they told us what we should do, that was it. I mean, we didn't need to be stopped or running or stopping, and that means saving minutes. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So it's good for them, it's good for us, and the orchestra really enjoys because to connect to what you said before, is the base of the orchestra, the bass section. I mean, we are an orchestra has got percussions, but to get the percussion in a way that is really gives the rhythm of the orchestra, you must go quite far away in the history of music. More than anything else, they give a sound, as I can say, but the real rhythmical section all over the repertoire is the basses. Because you don't have the drummer that kicks in 4 in an orchestra, unless you go in Bernstein or very late in the 20th century. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But before, if you do, that's the drums. But it's also a note. I mean, we also need to. So it doesn't work either if you do that. Neither. So we must hear the note and the same. So I'm doing in the same time the notes of Mozart Jupiter, but also I'm so you have to find a type of bowing. It's true that in that case, in the orchestra, you are in many people. So sometimes you can exaggerate a little bit, because if it doesn't come out from your bass, maybe your friend will make it, and if he doesn't make it, I'll make it. We are in 6, so we can be a little bit more extreme. When you are by yourself in a chamber music contest, where often happens the same thing, the bass is fundamental to have a good sound of the group. There you are by yourself, of course, and that's different. So you must be careful, not to make the sound of the bass go in distortion, as I can say, get distorted. So it's funny because that affects sometimes the way in which some students do the competition for an orchestra. That is not easy. Sometimes I said, well, in many ways, to do an international competition, solo competition, it's difficult because there is a very big program with tricky pieces, but you organize it yourself. You do it in your own way. You can, the distribution of the bow, the economy of the bow, you can just think about before with your pen. When you are in the orchestra and you are making an excerpt by yourself, you are doing something that is not conceived to be played by one bass, but it's conceived like sometimes even an effect of the section. So, and you are by yourself, so you have to find a good compromise between making the jury know that you know the piece in the orchestra, but on the other hand, they can hear some sound. You see what I mean? So, if I play in the orchestra, I make I exaggerate. But if I make Beethoven Fifth Trio, I can even, try and exaggerate. But now, if I go and play that way by myself, it might be a little bit too rough. So if I play it in a competition, probably. To make in a way that I can hear more the notes, you know what I mean? Yeah. But maybe if in the orchestra I played like that, it would be too weak. Multiplied. Yes, if in the orchestra I play. Maybe it's a little bit too gentle, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So does that mean that you can give away some quality?
You must reason in orchestra. I think you must reason in terms of sound of a group.
Yes,
and that's different than thinking to the sound of your own one bass by itself. So the sound of the group may be in some passages nicer if we sort of are more into, if we put more energy into it, or on the other hand, sometimes, for instance, in a group you can decide also to mix fingerings or bowings. Many times, if you got a slurred pass, maybe you split and you make half do, and the other. So in the group you'll hear a slur, but with more articulation, you know what I mean? Yeah. But I can do it myself, you know what I mean? So if I'm in a chamber group and I see the slurs doesn't work, I must try my best to do it unslurred, but with a sort of phrasing like if I had a slur, you know what I mean? So that's like in Rigoletto, in Otello. That we got this E flat with the B flat. It's nice that somebody does it with portamento. But maybe, 9 people doing the shift, maybe that if a couple do. So I might say the last desk, or just something, you do it with that position, so that in the overall, in the group, you'll hear the shift. But there is somebody that is making it clean.
You stole my question now. You was one step ahead of me. Great.
That's great.
Because we have so many, we have the same note on different strings, like you did now.
Yes.
And we have sometimes to decide what is best musically and technically and in intonation wise.
Yes. Well, we had a great master in that was the experience we did with Barenboim, because he's among the very rare cases of a conductor that got into, so he just didn't say what he wanted, but he said he went in the strings especially to say how to do with the position, and especially the intervals of fourth and fifth of course in the repertoire, in the, let's say, classically, if we are speaking of a melody, but especially in the romantic one, or since Wagner forward, and in the opera of Wagner, usually. It's so dry. Unless the music is actually requiring that. So I don't know. Maybe that's a chord, so I would play. But if I'm in a phrase, I don't know, I'm improvising, but to explain you the difference, if I may, it's much drier, the question, So especially some intervals, they do require, usually we have to think, to a questo è famoso, aspetta. In Brahms, no?
String shifts, what you're saying, if I understand you right, string shifts
string affects
the quality
music.
of the phrase.
The quality, and also affects what you want to say with that note.
Yes.
It's undoubtful that has got a darker quality, there is a sort of more like a wine with 10 years of 10 years old, that's brighter, so it's a different content. So maybe you have to choose it. But the change of string, it can be also something that is comfortable, but that when you have difficult passages. So, for instance, I often use a scale. I used to make scales trying to keep as much as possible the hand still, using, you see, extensions of position now. Technically, usually the old school is more in covering one tone on the bass, with different slightly differences in the fingers they use, but basically 1-2-4 or 1-3-4 as, but mainly one tone. But nowadays you can usually, and it's not say that they didn't use it in the past, you can easily get to 1 tone and a half, if not 2 in some cases. So when you think if I start moving, and you say, wow, that's virtuoso, that's just Bottesini. It's not true. I think it's Forza del Destino that feels. If I don't put an extension there, I should make. You see what I mean? I nearly couldn't do the slur because where I do put the chain, it's written. So, if I don't do the extension. In any case, I can't read it. That's why many times they do it unslurred. Many times they do. But if you put the extension, you can do slurred. And that's opera. It's not Bottesini. You know what I mean? Okay. And I think technically also that is now common to use. So I'm meaning instead of, with its other. The bass, as I told you, has improved so much technically, the bass nowadays.
You prefer 1-3-4?
I started with 1-3-4 Nisse, so I didn't really, I never changed. Well, in the sense that in the common position, but then since I use all that extensions, from one point of the fingerboard at least, it doesn't really make a big difference, because since I can use even 1-2-4 or 1-3-4 or in 1 tone and a half of extension, is sort of the problem is bypassed. But I must say I've been trained with that position. So this position you have to be careful and allow enough space to the 4, because sometimes a mistake they make with our position is this one. So we got the first extremity that is larger the first. So if you do the 1-3-4, you must sort of correct, like you would 1-2-4. You must be wider on the first one than on the other. So nothing that goes in the middle otherwise.
And there are a few variations. We have the Francois Rabat thinking of positions, which changed a little bit, of course. And we also have some virtuosos who played with 4 fingers.
Now you anticipated me, because from a certain point over you could.
And from the 4th position, yes.
From the 4th?
Yeah.
Sometimes that's useful. Sometimes that's useful. But even on the thumb. If I make an octave with the 4th, we have all been trained to use the 3rd, but sometimes, we must remember. You see, it's more stretched, it's stretched more than with the 4th, just to tell you.
That's maybe. That brings us back a little bit what we were speaking about before, because this is a way of challenging yourself in terms of development.
There you are. I didn't start. That's all things I did by myself eventually. Yeah, of course, in Cremona with Maestro Petracchi, we started speaking about extensions.
Yes.
But then, of course, you must get to the point. I often tell my students, you mustn't think to the extension like something that you're doing strange. Like that when you do an extension, you sort of, I'm doing this. Well, it shouldn't be like that, like some sort of naughty thing.
Okay, yes.
Naughty thing that you see.
Did you see that?
You see, I make the extension. So it should be practiced like a normal. So you do the extension like you do all the other things. Otherwise, it always remain like something strange to you and to the listener. You know what I mean? So everything you do, you have to retake it, to re-practice in the same way you practice the other positions. You know what I mean?
Do you have any plans of writing a method book or something?
That would be, I mean, that probably eventually I'll do it, Nisse. I haven't got a plan in the short time for many reasons, because I'm still playing for my own nature. In the same moment I would write something, maybe the day after I would say, pero I can do something better out of that. But the ideal thing it would be, Nisse, that somebody else would look and we would speak and they would help me put down things, you know what I mean, in a more rational...
You should work together with an editor of some kind.
I should work together with somebody really good in that.
Today we are using a Bernadelle bass that you have from the house, the opera house in Gothenburg, and you had maybe an hour or something to play this before.
No, I just picked it up 3 minutes.
Oh, okay, yes.
Yes.
So, yes.
As bass players, we are so used to change instruments.
I know also. Yes.
You hope to find some sort of bass that, you know, from your eye to your eyes, it sort of feels friendly.
Yeah.
You know?
But I know you have a couple of instruments.
I got 2 Marcucci basses, that are sort of end of 19th century. He worked sort of in between. He sort of died in 1914 something, I think. So, and very likely one has got a label, the other one hasn't, but you know, practically it's prettier the one that hasn't got the label than the one that has got it. And probably they are the mature, the phase quite much mature of him. So I think in one it's you can read the 1890. Not clear if it's 1 or 7, you know, because it's very much them.
Yes.
That means the other one it could be roundabout because they are very similar, very similar. And he was an incredible guy. You know? Marcucci, if you see the picture, was a bit, I don't know if you know Antonio Ligabue as a painter, the type of really naive type of people with incredible genius. You see his pictures with just, it was like a farmer, he looks more than a violin maker, you know, with a rope instead of the belt.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
And looking good only for a picture that he made. There is a picture with a cello, because apparently he was famous more for cellos in his times.
Okay.
Custode Marcucci.
Yeah.
And but you know, the comment of this little booklet where the author of the booklet speaks about Marcucci said, but he wasn't good at all in making business. So usually people, they bought their basses, his basses, and they sort of sold them at 3 times more, because he wasn't clever at all. He was a really simple man.
He wasn't an entrepreneur.
And it's incredible that now cellos, they got a good value, but he's become much more famous for the basses. Because basses, they got this amazing sound, and they are so comfortable. Mine too, they are, if the most common shape, we can say it's 3/4.
Yeah.
You know, from that, you could consider mine 4/4. You know, it's like the most common shape, but they are a little bit wider. That makes them very versatile, because they can work in an orchestra very well, like in solo. Of course, they got 2 slightly different characteristics, because one is played a lot in the orchestra. So the instruments they learn. It's like they get a memory of the vibrations you give to them. So if you play a bass, always in the top range, it will open up. That's what they say. Si apre, it opens up, and it will be really good on that register, more than a bass that you don't usually work on highest tension, that remains a bit closed. So a bass that has been always used more there, it will eventually get deeper basses, then you'll get in another bass, but you should play for years on the same range. It's like if the wood is sort of gets looser on some frequencies that you use the most, in some way. Yeah. And so the one I use usually as a solo is like it's trained to stay in that extension. So it's got beautiful basses, but when you go up, you really feel it has no limit. The other one you can feel has been used a lot in the orchestra. So it's got a color of low frequencies that is really like, I would say, l'aceto balsamico or Modena, that dark color and slightly sweet.
Syrupy.
Yes, syrupy. Even the color is a little bit like aceto balsamico.
Yeah. There are theories about that frequency that you actually, it's like massaging the instrument for playing in certain frequencies.
Exactly.
And I have one more thing that we should speak about, that you promised me.
Yep.
That we should speak about your views on Italian, French, and German grip.
Right.
We were speaking about.
Right.
I mean, number one, is there actually something called the Italian grip?
Well, the Italian grip should be the Dragonetti one, really.
From the beginning, yes.
We are using the variation of the French.
Yeah.
Actually, the only one that they're using their own are the French, really. That is the French one that actually is French. Yes.
What I mean? Because, I mean, basically, if we think, we have the hair is what we have physically in touch with the string.
Sure,
right?
Exactly.
And that's no difference with German bow and French bow.
No, it's the same. Usually they are the same. I mean, you can choose, each one can choose, because we use a lot of dark ones.
Yes, we can change the hair.
So usually somebody in the orchestra finds that they are slightly less fine, you know what I mean? So they're a little bit rougher as type of hair, but in orchestra they give a good grip.
Yes.
They are less refined if you have to make it a tune or some really half color, you know what I mean?
Yes.
They're a little bit more
salt and pepper.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So you can do all variation. I stay on these white ones that they are actually these ones. I try to find some fresh ones, because the problem with hair is as well that sometimes of course, the horse is not a live horse, but sometimes they are there for many years.
Yes.
So if you take a stock that has been there, like hair, it might get less elastic. So with the amount of power you give when you do Strauss or heavy notes in the orchestra, they don't last very much. The French one, more or less, is there. You know what I mean? They keep the thumb on the stick. So that's and it gives a good agility. Of course, the more we move the point, the balance of the leverage, you know what I mean, in front, the more we enlighten the bow. So you improve in agility, you lose something in holding a sound, you lose weight in some way, because you are moving, like weighting something, you take out a weight from one side and it goes on the other side. So in Italy, somebody in the past slightly moved it. So they took the French one and went back. So I usually keep it the Italian way, I'm honest. I think from the School of Bologna, I don't want to be wrong, but it's there that something happened, where we put it in this part of the frog, and of course, you might lose something in agility that is not true, because using a proper bow, in any case, but you gain something in tenuto. it's easier to. Of course, the more I move it in front, the less weight I got there naturally.
Yes.
So I must put tension. I must say that the German way usually, the German bows usually are longer as well, and probably it's easier at the beginning, because for a beginner to think that you put, you know what I mean, the arm is already in a position towards the bass. You see, you must think less to make a sound. Sometimes when they hold the German, Italian or French way, sometimes what I think happens this. So the arm goes the other way, a lot of course you lose weight. So we want to make sure that the arm stays practically in the same position, you know, so you should just turn the hand, not the whole arm. So that's why often they tell you that you got less sound in the orchestra. You know, there was a bit the way of saying that the French bow is good for something, but in the orchestra, well, it's mainly because it's more difficult at the beginning to understand that in any case the arm goes into the string. You know? So if I do, you see. So it's not very different from
and now you're using.
You see, I'm putting it out there.
Yeah.
And if I lift this, you see what I, so when you turn the hand, if you turn also the arm, that's a problem, and but I think when we go forward, I think French bow has got a much higher control of mid-tones. You know what I mean? You see, it's a very precise control. I find that a mid sort of balzato might be more difficult. Of course, I'm not an expert, but I can see, speaking with my friends, that sometimes, you see, either you bounce or it's a bit more difficult. So, good player, top players, they can do everything with every bow, you know what I mean? So, but speaking about medium level, you know, or beginner, of course, probably it's easier for them to start German bows, so that's why in some ways became more and more common. I'm making a bit of a battle about that, not against the German bow, not at all, but about making, keeping our bow correctly, because that's the source of the problems. And if you start wrongly, that's a problem, because it's very difficult later on in the studies to go back. So that's what I think. Italian bow, if you like, is a bit of a compromise, because it gives a bit more weight towards the top. It gives is a little stronger.
I think we can conclude. We can make a conclusion about it's a little bit who is holding the bow.
Exactly.
So, with that said, do you mind playing something as the finish for?
Well, let's try. I don't know what. I'll try. Yeah, I might make a mess.
Great.
A bit of Gliere Tarantella.
I'm sure we could
Tarantella, we are experts on Tarantella in Italy.
You are experts on Tarantella. Pino,
thank
you very much
it was a great pleasure.
Taking your time, and write a nice comment to Pino, to Giuseppe here, and don't forget to get back to the channel. Thanks and bye.